Okay, I appreciate you all coming out today. As we announced a little over a week ago, our process in this search has advanced to the point where we were able to identify our first victim in this process, Mr. C.L. Daniel. That is at the end of what has been a multi-year process, beginning with historical research, leading to geophysical scanning, then moving on to core sampling, test excavations, further excavations, full excavations. Then when remains were identified that seemed like they might be consistent with what the historical record was telling us, those individuals were exhumed, that at least that had been identified to that point. And then DNA, as best as possible, was recovered from them, and then fed into a genealogical and DNA database, which led us to Mr. Daniel's family. Now, that's a 60-second summation of 5 to 6, well, really, if you're being honest about the historical work, about a quarter century of work to get us to this point. All of this is based off of and there's a lot of challenges for us in this, in that the documentary, record keeping around the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre was intentionally not very thorough. And so our team of experts have had to work in trying to find individuals who were hidden and buried in a process where we didn't know who they were or where they were buried. The one thing that we do know, thanks to an invoice and a receipt that was identified by our historical research team, is that there were 18 victims that Tulsa County paid for them to be buried in Oak Lawn Cemetery. And that has been the main focus of our efforts in the cemetery to date. This is the one place where we have documentary evidence, not somebody's oral history or testimony, but literally in writing. We know that there are 18 race massacre victims, unidentified, buried in that cemetery. Mr. Daniel is, I believe, the first one of those that we've found. Well, that leaves, at a minimum, 17 more individuals that we need to be able to identify to give their families the same opportunity for a proper burial that we're working with Mr. Daniel's family to give him. And a big part of this, we're fortunate that the work to date, there are a number of individuals whose DNA profiles are being developed, and that other genetic relatives have been flagged for further work, just like Mr. Daniel's family had been, but we haven't been able to identify them yet. We also know that there is a significant area in the part of the cemetery where Mr. Daniel was buried that we have not excavated yet. And so today, our team is back at it to continue that excavation and continue that work moving forward. I think there's a couple things that have changed a lot since the last excavation that we did. First of all, this further excavation is the recommendation of our technical team. At every step of this process, at the City of Tulsa, we have viewed our role is to help facilitate the work of these experts so that they can focus on finding our neighbors who were murdered. Their recommendation to me was that they continue this excavation in this specific area. And so thanks to the support of the Tulsa City Council, we had that included in the budget that I presented to them. It was adopted, and we're moving forward with that today. Another key thing has changed, though, that I think is really important, which is that the profile that our team is looking for when they're looking for remains in the ground has been proven out with Mr. Daniel's identification. They have been looking for individuals buried in plain wooden caskets, even if they don't show signs of trauma, which, very importantly, Mr. Daniel's remains do not show signs of trauma. But he fit a profile in that his body was placed in a casket that was too small for him. It was a standard plain wooden casket, which is exactly what they are looking for. So we know that the profile that they're looking for has borne out. We also know now that Mr. Daniel, the area that he was buried in, is also right next to the only two race massacre victims who we know are buried with headstones in Oak Lawn Cemetery. So now we have a general area of focus within a much larger cemetery for them to be focused on, and that's where this excavation is going to be moving ahead. So all of this, it is. I'm really grateful for the citizens of Tulsa sticking with this process. This has not been a quick process, and yet everything that we have done to date has improved our understanding of what's underground in Oak Lawn Cemetery and where things are. And every excavation that we do increases our knowledge of where remains are in that cemetery, and potentially then giving our forensic experts the opportunity to assess them and do the same type of work that's been done with Mr. Daniel's remains. So I'm incredibly grateful, that there are ideal times of year to be doing this work out in the field. July and August in Oklahoma is not one of those times. But again, I think it speaks to the level of personal commitment that this research team has, that they didn't want to wait. They wanted to get out there as quickly as possible and continue this work. And I, on behalf of the citizens of Tulsa, I just want to reiterate how grateful we are for their expertise, their knowledge, and their personal devotion to this work.